You know, it's a Sunday afternoon, and I'm feeling kind of bored. Whatever should I do today? Hey, here's some wood from Menards. Wow, a lot of stuff here. I could really do some damage with this. You know what I think I'm going to do? Let's build a caboose. Maybe even two. Coming up next. Hello everyone, and welcome to yet another video podcast here on the War Bonds channel. If you don't know me and you're not familiar with the channel, my name is Eric. I'm a locomotive engineer by profession, an avid model railroader, and just a lifelong rail enthusiast. You know, friends are important, or even having just one good friend. Now, while this is not going to be a video about mental health, even though it's important, we are actually in Friend, Nebraska. Now, instead of sitting at my desk and talking about the intro of the video that I'm going to do today, I figured we would do a little impromptu rail fanning. So we are actually here in Friend, Nebraska, along the BNSF Hastings subdivision. We've actually got a westbound sand train coming, and he should be here within the next few minutes, but Friend, Nebraska is going to be the focal point for several points that we talk about in the video today. So let's address the pink elephant in the room. Eric starts a number of different projects, talks about them, and then scoots to the next project. Well, in this case, there's a reason for that. I have been commissioned to construct a BN, Burlington Northern, wide vision caboose. So this time, because I have a paying customer, it takes priority. Now, I kind of wrestled with the fact, do I want to start a new video on this series or try to continue on with the stuff I've talked about? Well, being that I need to give the paying customer priority for what they want, I figured I would start this new video series. And being that I have a paying customer, this is going to keep me in line in getting this from start to finish. As I said, we're in Friend, Nebraska, and it's going to be a focal point for a number of things when it comes to the research that I'm doing for this project. So follow along as we get started here on building a Burlington Northern wide vision caboose. Okay, so we're back to the office here, and while I would have loved to have stayed outside longer, it's a beautiful day temperature-wise, but unfortunately the wind is something fierce out there. So rather than trying to fight the wind noise to talk to you, I figured I would just come back to the house and finish up the introduction for the video. So how did I get blessed to get this opportunity to be commissioned to build this wide vision caboose? Well, my friend whom I'm building this for lives in a town south of Lincoln, Nebraska called Beatrice, Nebraska. Well, there's a branch line that goes into Beatrice from a town probably about 30 miles west of Lincoln called Crete, Nebraska. Now, at one time back in the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy days, or CB&Q, there was a town called Wymore Nebraska, which was a major division point for the CB&Q and later the Burlington Northern. There was a lot going on there. It was a beehive of activity. But in later years, Wymore was discontinued as a hub because management thought, hey, why do we have Wymore when we can just move everything up to Lincoln and consolidate things and not have to pay for two different terminals? So unfortunately, Wymore is all but a shadow of what it used to be. And the tracks between Wymore and Beatrice have since been pulled up, but the Beatrice sub, as it's called, still sees a local that runs between Crete and down to Beatrice, and on occasion they run grain trains down there as well. So it's not a very busy line, but it is still in use because it does have its productive uses for BNSF. Well, anyway, so my friend has done a lot of photography down that way of the many locals and has gotten to know a number of the crew members that work down there. So he's a familiar face. One of the things that the Wymore local, or excuse me, well, the Beatrice local now, but when Wymore did exist, there was actually a caboose that was stenciled Wymore local only. So my friend, having seen this caboose so many times, just made it a special place in his heart, you know, to really appreciate this caboose and appreciate seeing the local running with it, as well as the people that were involved. So with this in mind, that's why he was asking me if I could make this caboose for him. So with all that said, my friend did ask me if I would build him the wide vision caboose in 1-inch scale. He's at the verge of retirement, so as a retirement gift to himself, he wanted to have this caboose just to remember all those times and all the years that he's been down there taking photographs of the many operations that have happened over the years on this line. So basically what we're going to get started with is the poplar wood that I use for everything because it is a hardwood and it's a very sandable wood as well. So at this point, we'll go out to my garage, to the driveway, and I'll show you how I got started. Now, keep in mind, as I was doing some things, I realized that I kind of had to start over again a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. But as we go along in the video, I'll explain as we go along. Well, I didn't just up and come up with the idea that I was going to build a caboose that simply, even though that's not necessarily beyond me to think something like that. But usually if I have materials with me, I already have a plan set up that I'm going to do something. But in this case, I was at a train show in Lincoln, Nebraska last weekend, and during that time I actually received an order for a Burlington Northern wide vision caboose. And I believe this was a former Great Northern caboose. So anyway, I'm excited because it's something different, but thankfully I have some experience at building cabooses, so this shouldn't be too bad. So I have been giving it some thought for the last few days as to what I'm going to do. So what we're going to start out with is I have two 4-foot by 12-foot wide sections here, and we're going to run 4 of them through the table saw. Why 4, you ask? Well, because I decided if I'm going to build one, maybe I'll build 2. So I don't exactly know what the second one is going to be yet. I'm kind of partial to maybe doing a Santa Fe caboose. And if I do a Santa Fe caboose, I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to do one that is going to be representative of when they were actually in service as occupied cars, or if I'm going to do one in the more modern day time period where they're basically used as shoving platforms. So shoving platforms are basically the way of giving the crew members something to ride on, so that if you have to shove a cut of cars for, let's say, 2-3 miles, a guy doesn't have to ride the side of a boxcar or a hopper car for all that time. And in my early railroad career, I did that. As guys get older, they can't do that as well, and it does tire your arms out. So it's easier to stand on the end platform of an old caboose and go for as many miles as you need. But anyway, we're going to get started here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take these 4 sections. Now, these are all going to represent the sides. What I want to do is actually bevel the top side of each of these pieces. That's going to lay the groundwork for the bevel that we need to construct the angle for the roof line. So we're going to get started with that right now. Okay, so I've got all 4 boards unwrapped, and I've got the first board here. So I'm just going to set the fence just at a kind of a random spot here, and I'm just going to take off the top portion, or what will be the top portion of each of the boards. Now I'm going to go a little shallow at first just to get that angle. So once I have the angle achieved at the top, then I'm going to straighten up the blade and take off whatever I need to get the exact height for each of the sides. Now, why am I doing that? Well, the first reason is, obviously, I want to get the angle. So I set the blade to about a 5-degree angle in order to get the contour for what will be the roof line. Now, I'm also looking at these boards because there are some imperfections in them. So by looking at the boards and deciding where the imperfections are, I can cut those things off all at once. So if it takes 2 passes to go through, well, then that's what it takes. But at least we're going to achieve the desired height that we need for each of the cars that we're building here. Okay, so we have a little bit of imperfection here, and that's absolutely fine. As long as the boards are squared, which they normally are, then we don't have a problem here. So I'm going to go ahead, set the fence where we need it, and the blade at a 5-degree angle. Let's get started. Okay, so one of the things that you may have noticed is that when I was making that last cut, my wood shifted a little bit. So therefore, I'm going to have to do a different strategy here. So as you can see here, I have a drawing of the caboose that was actually supplied to me by the client. Now, even though it was a small file that was emailed to me, but I actually blew it up in Photoshop and then had it printed out at a print store. So I've actually got the drawing up here, and what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to section each of these sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over and I'm going to start at the end of one end and go in to where the cupola is. So when I measure this, so we're looking at roughly 10 3/4 inches. So I'm going to cut a piece that'll be 10 3/4 inches. We'll come over to this side here, and looks like we're right at about 14 inches. So what I'm going to do is actually maybe go a little bit further, cut these down, and then I will go back later and revisit the angling of the bevels that I need for the roof line. Okay, so we're going to try this again, and this time we're just going to cut the shorter pieces as we measured earlier. Okay, so we're going to take ourselves a little road trip. We're actually going to go to a little town in southeast Nebraska called Friend, Nebraska. Now, why are we going to this place called Friend, Nebraska? Well, there's actually a wide vision caboose on display in a park there. Now, I actually found this caboose by accident one time, just going out on a nice long leisurely motorcycle ride, and just pulled into the town. I was just doing some exploring, and I found this caboose. So ever since then, it's been a caboose that I like to go and visit. And I even told myself that with having the access to this caboose, it would be great to actually use it as a platform and basis to do a wide vision caboose. But now that I've actually got one in the two in progress, it'll be nice to go and take a few measurements and just look at a few things just to kind of get some ideas. Now, the one that I'm actually doing for my client is actually a former Great Northern caboose, whereas the one that we're about to go see here is actually a former CB&Q heritage caboose. Now, it doesn't look anything like it did when it was in service, because once it was donated to the town of Friend, they actually painted a mural on it and placed it in a park, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it would be cool if it looked like it did in its original form, but it's still pretty cool because, you know what, structurally, it's still there, and I'm able to go get some measurements off of it and just kind of walk around it. So this is all part of the research and development, you could say, that I like to do. So this is kind of fun to be able to take a little field trip and go check it out. So here we go, onward to Friend, Nebraska. Well, welcome to Friend, Nebraska. So this is the caboose that I was talking about that we were going to travel to see. Now, as you can see, it is actually in pretty good shape, all things considered, as old as it really is. But this is great because it's in a public park here, and I have free rein access to it. But we can certainly see that it is a former Burlington Northern caboose, because if you look at the edge there, you can see some of the green paint that's actually kind of showing through some of the red paint that's flaked off of it. But well, why did I actually come here to look at this? Well, in all reality, since the last clips that we did, I actually have an Atlas O-scale BN wide vision caboose that I've actually been taking measurements from. Now, I showed you the drawings that I taped up on my garage door that I was going to start following that. The unfortunate thing is that those old hand-drawn drawings, while they're pretty accurate and as far as the numbers go, as far as the measurements are accurate, but when it actually comes to blowing up something that small, if there's a bit of imperfection, the bigger you blow up the drawing, the bigger the imperfections get. So I realized that some of my measurements would have been off. Thankfully, before I started cutting up too much material, I realized this and just went ahead and started taking measurements off of the O-scale model that I have. So basically, we had to kind of start over again, sort of, but everything that we've done so far has been very accurate. But actually, it just gives me an opportunity to come out and actually take a look at an actual caboose and to be able to get the real measurements off the real thing. Now, okay, so one of the things that always tends to worry me a little bit about doing a caboose, not like I've done a whole lot, so everything that I'm doing, I want to get a good look at it here. So this is awesome that I've got this life-size replica in front of me. Well, it is a real caboose, but not a replica, but I have well, instead of looking at a picture, I can actually touch it. I can actually see things with it. And so I want to make sure that everything that I'm doing is as close as I can possibly get it. So just kind of looking at the step wells here, this is awesome here because there are some cabooses that actually have, instead of the holes, they actually have like rectangular looking grading on them for the steps. So I've actually got some material. It might be a little bit on the bigger side, but we're going to figure out how that goes. But now I've also got some tools with me to be able to take some measurements so that I can actually see, like, I want to get the angle of how the step wells are going to be. I've got my tape measure here so that I can try to measure out the width and the length of the walkway section here. So this really gives me an idea on how I need to build this. Now, granted, I'm building things out of wood, so therefore there are some things that are going to be a little bit more, a little bit thicker, just because it's not metal, so therefore I need a little bit more thickness for extra strength. And here we got the cushion drawbar here, and I'm actually thinking, since I experimented and figured out a way to make a cushion drawbar based on the Santa Fe boxcar that I was working on, I'm thinking that I may try to replicate an operable cushion drawbar. But we also see here just kind of the end plates here. So this is great to be able to look at this and just be able to take some measurements on what I need to cut, how long I need, what kind of angles I need. So I'm gonna just kind of set the camera aside here and have you follow along with me as I start taking some measurements here. Okay, so I'm actually going to use you guys as the sounding board, because I'm going to explain what I'm doing, as well as talk to you about some of the measurements here, just so I can actually use this as my documentation of some of my measurements here. So I'm just looking here at the distance between the edge of the decking and the end of the car body here. So I just make a little bit of a measurement there. So looks like about 3.5 inches is what I need there, because I was really trying to figure out, because I'm still in the designing and figuring out stages of this project, because I'm trying to decide whether I want to keep the floor attach the body to the floor, or if I want to take the roof off or take the whole body off. So this gives me an idea to look at an actual caboose to actually see how things are actually done here. So I'm also going to take a little bit of a measurement here to show me the length of the top of the stairwell in there. So we got about a 12 and a half inches there. And then I want to take a look at the end here. Whoops. So that's about 44 inches right there. Then we can also take a look at the uncoupling lever here as well. So that's probably something that I'm going to try to put on there, because like I say, I'm building this for a client and there's a lot of things that he wants on it. So therefore we're going to try to put as much as we can possibly put on here. So now I'm going to go up here, whoops, and measure the end decking here. Okay, so that's about 67.5 inches. And then and we're going to say about 29.5 inches there. Okay, so now let's see what, oh, there it is. So now I'm actually going to take my tool for measuring angles here, and we're just going to take a look here. Okay, so we got about 110.7 is the degrees, the degree of the angle on the step well there. So that kind of gives me a little bit of a estimate of what I need. Now also, let me take my tape measure out again, because I also want to measure the inside here. So that's about 29 inches there. Okay. So at least that gives me a little bit more of an idea of what I want to do here. And I think at the moment that is what I need for the ends there. So I'm sure before this all becomes part of the video that you're now looking at, I'm going to be going back and looking to kind of get some ideas here. But let's also look here at the steps here. So looks like we've got roughly 8 inches for the steps there. Okay. So, and then I think we said 29 for the width of the step well. So I know this looks like a lot of work, and this is when I have people wanting to patronize my work and everything. This is one of the reasons why it's so expensive, because it's not like just taking, you know, a model kit that's already, you know, the parts are already fabricated and all you got to do is glue a few pieces, and within an hour or two you're done. I'm scratch building everything out of wood and actually coming to a source to actually get the measurements and get the angles so that I can make everything right. So if somebody's going to patronize me, or I'm just going to do it for myself, I've got high standards that I want to make everything as good as I can. Now, is it going to be 110% perfect? No. But is it going to be very close? You betcha. So now, if this looks like Chinese arithmetic to you, well, yeah, it probably does look that way, but I have everything just kind of scattered out here. But this is actually the cupola. So if we were to take the parts here, let's just start putting everything together. Okay, now you can start to see how this is going to take shape. So I've actually cut out a set of parts for the BN wide vision caboose, but I've also cut out some parts for a second one as well, because I decided that I actually wanted to do a wide vision caboose at one time. So I figure if I'm going to do one, I might as well cut out the parts for a second one. Whether I keep it or not, or I'm able to sell it upon its completion, remains to be seen. But when I build things, I don't really have a major commitment unless it's a commitment to a customer who is actually patronizing my business in order to build one. Okay, so once again, I'm spreading the parts out here because I'm sure that, well, maybe this time it looks like, oh, I don't know, calculus, algebra. It's a little simpler than the cupola anyway, but if we do this, put that together, and we slide this together here. This is the basic size, or one of the basic side for one of the sides anyway. And what I ended up doing is, because obviously the cupola is going to fit inside this little notch here, so there was really no other way for me to simply take one solid piece of wood and try to cut everything out. It just, was going to be a pain in the rear, so I just decided to actually cut my sections and then glue them all together. That way it's clean, and it took me all of a few minutes as opposed to trying to do something in a few hours that still may not be as good and accurate as I need it to be. Wood glue is definitely my friend when it comes to putting these things together, because the formula that they use for the wood glues is just absolutely amazing. And once these go together, they're not coming apart. So that means that we're going to have solid joints when everything is put together. Here we see the ends of the caboose. And as you can see here, I was able to actually make windows here. Now, even though these are squared and the windows are actually supposed to be, well, they're squared, but the corners are actually supposed to be rounded on the end sides there. So, if nothing else, I might add a little bit of material in there and then try to round it out with a Dremel tool. But we're still a ways away from that, so eventually I'll come up with something. But I usually come up with a pretty good idea. Well, okay, it's the next morning, and I've actually got some parts put together. The cupola is actually coming together quite well. For the most part, it's just pieced together as far as the major components go. Now, if I actually reach in here, of course, these parts have been glued together. But the roof angles have been glued together, and these are still have yet to be glued together. But one of the things that I want to make sure that I'm totally clear on is how I've got these parts spaced, because obviously I need to make sure that there's equal distance here as there is here, so that the window spacing is proper and equal on all four sides. But we're getting there. Like I said, the morning is just getting started here, so I'm going to for sure have the cupola put together. I may need to put a piece across the top here, but you know, that shouldn't be too big of a deal. So that's what we've got going so far with the cupola. Okay, so after doing some gluing here, you can see how everything has come together here. So basically what I've done is taken each of the sides, as you can see here, and then I put a filler in here towards the roof line, which is also the top section of the doorway, as well as a spacer here, which also represents the bottom section of the doorway. Now, even though the passenger car video that I did, you know, that car is not anywhere near being completed, but I did actually learn something from doing that. So instead of trying to get the bandsaw and cut up this way and then cut up that way and everything, I was just able to make two solid sides here and then actually add this piece in here. So when this stuff dries, then what I'll do is I'll put a pencil line so that we can figure out where the rest of the peak here goes. And I'll do that for this section as well. And then I'll just probably take the chop saw, maybe take a little bit down, and then use the grinder, the tabletop grinder, just to kind of get everything down and smooth everything out. So we're going to give this some time to dry, and in the meantime, I'll probably start working on putting the sides together. So actually, as you can see here, this piece of board here is actually what's going to eventually be the floor / underframe for this caboose. And I'm using it because it's a very flat piece of wood. So therefore, as I'm laying everything out, I can actually lay everything out flat and everything is going to dry together. Now, one of the other things that I also did here as you can see here, is I took my router and I actually beveled the edges here where the posts are, the corner posts are. If you can kind of see that there we go. So it also leaves a bit of a lip, so I'm gonna have to actually grind that down as well, but you know, probably with the hand sander or something like that, but we'll get it down and everything will be flush. But there's gonna have to be some filling in here where I had to piece things together in order to make the window openings and everything. But so far, you know, as you can see, everything is coming together, and I will certainly keep you posted and give you the step-by-step here. Well, it's been a few days, and I have actually gotten a little bit of progress done on the car body of this wide vision caboose. So we're just going to do a little walk around, since I actually have all four sides together, and I have the size of the cupola actually just pieced onto the body itself, just to kind of give you an idea as to how this is taking shape. So let's take a little look. Okay, so as we start out looking at this here, if you look at the bottom there on the left side, it looks like there's a gap there, but that's just because the table is imperfect there. But otherwise, the bottom edge is straight. So we just kind of go in and take a little bit of a closer look. As you can see, we've got the sides of the cupola together there. Now, as you can see, those white strips there on the side. So when I put the sides together, because as you saw earlier, the sides consist of 3 individual pieces in order to make everything fit together the way I need. So I lay some of my old train orders down and on a flat surface, and when I glue it, it just happens to soak up the glue in the paper. So when I pull the paper off just to protect the surface that I'm laying it on, I end up getting that bit of white paper there. But of course, that's no big deal because it's all going to be sanded off anyway. So we just take a little bit of a walk around here, and as we see the ends here, everything came together pretty flush. And I did have to make a little bit of a change because as I've talked in my earlier videos, there are times that I start something one way, and by the time it's all said and done, I realize, oh, I shouldn't have done it that way, or I need to make a little bit of a change. So as we originally did, we have the 2 sides there, and then of course I pieced everything together here in order to make the window opening. I stuck a piece in here, and I originally had a piece gapped through the gap down here at the bottom. However, I had to end up taking that off, and I actually had to put another piece down here because I actually made a little bit of a mistake by cutting my floor slash underframe a little too short. But no big deal. You just have to roll with the punches, you know, when you miscalculate things or you're just not thinking. But everything worked together. We have the proper angle of the peak here, and so as we go around now, as you can see, there's no windows or anything on the side. And once again, you know, we'll do some sanding here to smooth all that out. But yeah, there's no windows on the side because basically what's going to happen is I will take some thin pieces of, well, you know, it could be metal, it could be really thin pieces of wood if I can get them that thin, but there's going to be plates over the windows, so on the prototype. So basically there's no sense in cutting holes that ended up getting plated over anyway. So that's what we're going to do, and that's why you see no windows on the side there. But we come around to the other side here, and basically a replica of the first side that we looked at. Once again, the peak ended up being pretty good there. So it's been a couple days. I've been giving this thing some time to dry and just some time to sit here. So we'll actually come back to this later on, and we'll start the sanding process. So there we have it for today. And I think this is where I'm going to leave off with part 1 of this video here. But like I say, don't be alarmed. This will not be another, oh, well, he started a part 1 and he teaches us about what he's doing and starts into something else. Like I've said in the very beginning, this is work for a paid customer. So this is definitely a high priority project here. And stay tuned, and we'll be back with part number 2 here shortly. We're just going to kind of take our time, but I won't keep you in too much suspense, and we'll be back before you know it. Thanks a lot for watching.